and welcome back. This is part 2 of preserving for fall. Thanks so much for being here. Now last time we made hot sauce, we made cider, we made so much more. So if you haven't seen that video already and that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and check that one out. We have other great preserving to do today though. So before we get started, let me just say hi. I'm Val. I made the recipe website Very Vegan Val. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm not a professional canner. I'm just an amateur who loves canning at home. So these are not necessarily recommendations or recipes for you. I'm just showing you what I do and hopefully that's somewhat inspirational to you. I will put in the description box below any recipes I use or things that I was inspired by, so they are there for your benefit. Okay, let's get preserving. Let's make zucchini pickles. The first choice when making pickles is what shape are they gonna be? So you could do like spears, you could do like long slices, you could do like round slices, you could do like a dice. Honestly, I'm explaining all this because I'm still trying to decide. I think I'm feeling lazy and I'm just gonna do round slices because that's kind of one of the simplest options. That's what we're going for. A lot of people make sweet zucchini pickles. We're gonna be making like a dill zucchini pickle. We're also gonna add an onion. I would add more than this, but this is all I have. Turns out when I wasn't paying attention, we ran out of onions. So since we don't have a lot of them, I'm going to dice them so they go further. If I had more, I would put them in half moons because I love getting a pickled onion in any jar of pickles I'm eating. Then we're gonna add a couple tablespoons of salt, cover with cool water, and set aside for a couple hours. This process will help to bring out excess moisture in your zucchini. Let's make a pickle brine. We want pretty tart pickles, so I'm going with 3 cups of vinegar and 1 cup of water. And to mellow out the flavor just a little bit, we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of sugar. And we're gonna heat it until it comes just to a boil. In the meantime, we have these zucchini to tend to, so I'm just going to strain off all the water. And now we're gonna pack our pickle jars. I like doing slightly different things in each one. So in this one, we're gonna add a few chili flakes and a few sprigs of fresh dill. We're gonna be adding the dill to all of them. And now we're gonna pack in as many of the zucchinis as we can. That jar is filled up, let's go to the next. A few cloves of garlic. On to the next jar. For this one, in addition to our dill, we're gonna be adding some fennel seed. You wanna make sure you're leaving at least that 1/2 inch of head space that you need when making pickles. Our brine is ready to go. Let's fill our jars. Make sure you fill them and then go back because it takes a minute for the brine to get all the way down. Whew, okay, so we made a mess. You wanna leave 1/2 inch of headroom in all of these. This one does not have 1/2 inch, so I'm just gonna pour a little off real quick. And that's important so things seal properly. All right, let's clean up the vinegar I got all over the stove. On the plus side, aside from the sugar, this is essentially a homemade cleaner. Which, by the way, is kind of silly when all those like advocates of natural health say things like, oh, you can't eat this ingredient. This is like the same ingredient that's in like wall cleaner, like water, vinegar, baking soda. These are all ingredients in many cleaners, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. Anyway, we've got our new, never used mason jar lids with that waxy seal. Pop them on. And our not new, used many time mason jar rims that we will screw on as well. You don't want to do it like tight, just like sort of whatever you can reasonably do with your hand. Excellent. And while we were doing that, we very cleverly got this hot water bath canner ready. I would show you, but it just fogs up my lens. I'm gonna use this today to separate the cans from the bottom of the pot. You could also use anything you want to create that separation, or don't tell anyone, but a lot of the time I just don't create a separation and it works fine. So we're gonna pop these into the water and let it boil for 10 minutes. See you then. We have 2 beautiful jars of pickles and a bit of a situation. This is right after I bragged that I don't usually even put anything on the bottom. Seems like that works better for me. Successful 2 cans of pickles. Yay! Preservation project done. That's a fun aside. I'm going to teach you how to see if something is properly canned. And if this is useless to you, feel free to skip it. So I've got a grape jelly that I've already canned, my zucchini pickles from yesterday, and then for the last one, yeah, you can see Chad's already been eating like all the grape jelly. So this is an empty jar. Obviously that one's not canned. Now we're gonna listen. Do you hear how different that sounds? Additionally, there is like a poppy thing here that you'll be able to pop in and out if it's not properly canned, but I actually think the sound is a more reliable indicator. This one's lower and it sounds more, I don't know, there's more of like vibration, there's more like echoing. Okay, I can do that for an annoying amount of time, so I'm gonna let you go now. Bye-bye. Let's talk tomatoes. So even before I grew my own tomatoes, I've been canning my own tomatoes. In the past, I've just bought between 25 and I think one year I even did 50 pounds of tomatoes from a farmer, and I canned those. I don't have that much this year, and I'd like to get my hands on some more, but I figured we should at least get a start on this while we're at it. So what I did differently this year that I've never done before is that I froze my tomatoes. It was really the only thing that made sense with them ripening at different times. And from what I've read, this should be fine. And in fact, it has a little bit of an advantage when taking the peels off the tomatoes. Now, usually I just don't take the peels off the tomatoes. I'll just pulse it in my food processor and can them peels and all, which I find totally fine. You can have this thing happen where the peels will come and they'll sort of roll up into like a little stick or like twig-like thing, and some people find that really unpleasant. I don't care that much. But since I did freeze them, we're gonna try this hack to get the skins off and see if it's worth it. Well, let's see how it goes. I've got a bowl of water as hot as my sink will go. I'm gonna dip my tomato in. It's supposed to just let the peel come off really easily. Well, okay, so yeah. And then you can, yeah, maybe you just need it a little longer because the peel will come off. It's not coming off as easily as I'd hoped, so I'm not gonna be too fussy about it, but there we go. Okay, so this is doing what the internet told me it should do. Whereas you can see the skin has already split and then I can just peel it off. That's what I was hoping for. All right, looks good. Just like a ton more to do. Anyway, I'm not sure how much more of this you need to see. Basically, once I get them peeled, I'm putting them all in this big bowl, and now they need to defrost mostly before we can do anything. If they have a little bit of ice left in them, that's fine, but you need to be able to put them in your food processor easily, so they need to thaw. We're probably looking at a tomorrow project for that. The projects are piling up. Next, I thought we would tackle my tomatillos. So I think it's about 6 pounds of tomatillos that need to be processed. So of course I'm going to make a salsa verde, because what else? First things first, we need to roast our tomatillos and remove all the husks. I always just do this by turning my oven on broil. And then we're just gonna pop them out of the husks and right onto our baking sheet. I got some purple tomatillos in here. They're very pretty. We're also gonna add some onion to this. I'm gonna do these 3 onions, and I'm just gonna chop them into like halves or quarters. For the chilies, I'm gonna be adding some 4 jalapenos and the singular serrano that I have left. All I'm gonna do here is chop off the stems and then cut them in half. And then we'll just chuck them again wherever we can find space on those pans. onions. Into the oven they go. They're gonna go under the hot broiler on high, and we'll take them out once we see some charring on top and that the tomatillos have become mushy. Check it out, it's squishy tomatillos. We're gonna put these in the food processor and work in batches until they're all processed. Then we're gonna put those into a big bowl so we can mix it together with some other ingredients. Batch 2. And the last batch is gonna be a little bit different because it's just everything else that we need to get into our salsa. We've got a handful of fresh cilantro, 3/4 of a cup of lime juice. We want like 6 cloves of garlic, but I'm using these real small ones. So we'll see what we get. I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic powder just to give a bit more garlic flavor since our fresh garlic is a bit lacking. We're gonna add about 2 teaspoons of salt, some pepper, and just a little sprinkle of cumin. Let's go ahead and give this a blend. We'll pour this in, and then give everything a good mix so the lime integrates well with all the tomatillos and other bits and bobs. I think this is a great time to do a little safety check and make sure our salsa has met the mandatory, I believe, 4.6 or less. It looks like we're around 3.4. Just gonna quietly add some more jalapeno, but you see nothing, cause I'm a good candidate who follows the rules and doesn't improvise. But I did already check the pH and we're well within the limit, so I'm not really too concerned. But you shouldn't do this. But also maybe you should develop a spicier salsa recipe. Just saying. I need to go find more jars. Goodbye. For large portions of the year, we have way too many mason jars. But then there's this time of year when they're never enough. 6 pints. This is a step you should always do that admittedly I only occasionally do, which is to wipe down the rims of your mason jars. Otherwise, you could have food stuck in there and that could actually cause your jars not to seal, which is a bummer. And I admit I only occasionally do it because I do it when I feel like I need to do it. It's sort of my MO in life. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Okay. New lids. Now we will hot water bath can these for 15 minutes. 7 jars of salsa verde. We'll label these and put these away. We've got defrosted tomatoes. They actually look much prettier on camera than they look in real life. This is really picturing the light really nicely. Here they just look mushy. The next step for these is going to be to cut off any bits like here where the stem is. And then I like to just lightly pulse mine in my food processor for sort of a diced effect. It ends up being somewhere between a puree and a dice. Maybe a crush. It's a crush. So let's go crush some tomatoes. So like I said before, I've never worked with frozen tomatoes before. And I will say this texture is very different than what I'm used to. We'll see if I end up liking it as much. It could be that this is something I never do again. But it was convenient. And there we go. This definitely is more of a process than I usually give it. But I think, again, it's a result of the frozen tomatoes. And it will still be good. I prefer more of a dice that you can get when you use fresh tomatoes than this, which does seem a lot closer to a puree, like a chunky puree, but it will still be fine. Now let's talk about jars. I do my tomatoes both in pint-sized jars and in quart-sized jars. And here's how that works. Acidity of tomatoes is usually safe for hot water bath canning, but it is on the edge. In order to guarantee it's safe for hot water bath canning, it's recommended that you add a little bit of acid. So if you want to use lemon juice, add 2 tablespoons to a quart-sized jar or 1 tablespoon to a pint-sized jar. I'm going to be using
citric acid, because it is essentially concentrated lemon juice and it's a lot easier to keep around the house than fresh lemons. You just need half a teaspoon for a quart-sized jar and a quarter teaspoon for a pint-sized jar. Additionally, I add salt to my tomatoes. You don't need to, but I think it is better. 1 teaspoon for a quart-sized jar and 1/2 teaspoon for a pint-sized jar. Next, we fill our jars with tomatoes. These only need a 1/4 of an inch of headspace. So we can fill them most of the way up. Great, and we're just gonna continue on that way until they're all filled. When I'm hot water bath canning tomatoes or something cold, I like to start them in the pot with the cold water and bring it up to a boil and then process it. It probably does mean I'm processing it overall a little bit longer than I need to, but that's not the end of the world. In something like jam, it could be a problem because you could over process it and you could destroy your pectin, which we don't want. But these are just tomatoes. They'll just be a little bit more cooked than they would have been otherwise. So put it on the stove, cover it, bring it to a boil, set a timer for 35 minutes, and let it simmer for 35 minutes.
Hello. Please ignore the total chaos that is around me because we've had a catastrophe. I have never had a canning incident go so badly as my tomatoes just went. And I'm smiling now, but I'm not smiling inside. As you can see, we have water, and it happened in every single jar I canned. Except this one, which it did also happen in, but the top of this one flew off and exploded into the air mid-canning. I have never had anything like this happen before. And I have 2 theories. Firstly, I got the headspace wrong, which is not a theory, I know I did. You're supposed to have 1/2 inch of headspace, which I thought was the case, but then I Googled it real quickly, and I think it was the dumb AI overview that said 1/4 inch, and I just went with it instead of checking and believing my instincts. So that's my bad. Or 2, it could be the jars, because it's every single jar, and honestly, I've never been that careful with headspace before, and I've never had a problem. So, just over half of my jars of tomatoes, including all the large ones, have been ruined. Thank you very much, that's great. I have a solution. My partner's coworker came up with this, so thank you. I'm going to be cooking it down and turning it into a sauce. The question is, am I going to try and can that sauce? And am I going to try and can the rest of the tomatoes that I have yet to can? And in order to answer that, we have to define what went wrong. So I'm going to try canning water to answer that question, to see if it is the jar. I've checked, the headspace on water is 1/2 inch. And so we're gonna see if anything goes wrong when I do that. And in order to properly answer the question, was it the jar or was it me, I'm going to add a little bit of food dye to this water. So, red food dye. We know that if we see red, if we see red in our jar at the end of this, it was the jar, it was not me. I will say part of me is hoping for that because then it won't have been my fault. But the other part of me would like my jars to work. And so I kind of hope I just fell. Either way, I guess I win and lose. See ya in a bit. The good news is the jars seem like they're fine. So I think my plan is to cook down these tomatoes to get out the excess moisture. I'm gonna cook the other tomatoes that I didn't try canning while I'm at it, and then re-jar them, and hopefully we'll see how brave I'm feeling, because I don't know if I can emotionally go through this again.
So you think you're getting to an end, and then a new project finds you. Kousa dogwood berries, or fruit. I've seen them called Kousa dogwood cherries. I think that's a nice term for them because they kind of look like fun disco cherries. These were growing on a neighbor's tree, not someone I knew, but I really wanted to pick them and make jam, so I tried to ask them. I went up to their house to see if I could, but they clearly weren't home, and I knew they had a dog, so I didn't want to ring the doorbell. So I just left a note and asked if I could pick them, and they gave me the nicest text back. They said, of course you can pick them. We have a step ladder if you need it. Like, feel free to pick from the tree in the front yard, but if you want to pick from the backyard tree, just like let us know first. It was a great illustration that sometimes asking is not as scary as it feels. So we're gonna make some Kousa dogwood jam today. The first step is to wash these off really well. The second step is going to be to boil them in water for about 15 minutes. I'm going to wash them like this, but then I'm going to pull the stems off before I boil them. If you've never seen a Kousa dogwood before, they make these cherries, and the inside, they've got this sort of like peach colored pulp. And inside there, it's hard to see, but there's a big old seed in there. So you want to be careful when you're eating them that you don't swallow that seed. The skin is also not very pleasant to eat, which is why jelly is a great application for it, because that way you don't have to do all the fiddly work of trying to get the pulp without the seed or the skin, which is a total pain. We're just going to do it by extracting it into the liquid. So we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 cups of these cherries, which means I'm going to be boiling all of this with, I believe, 8 cups of water. There's something very calming about work like this. It's repetitive. I wouldn't want it to be, you know, never ending. Doing it for 20 minutes is lovely. More than that, I don't really want to do it for, but it's meditative. You work with your hands. It's sort of calming in a way. I've been feeling quite a lot of anxiety recently about, you know, the continued fall of the United States into fascism. I don't know when this will be published, but I'm shooting this shortly after Jimmy Kimmel got taken off the air for saying basically nothing. And part of the response to that, I guess this is more part of a response to the backlash of Charlie Kirk. It's been encouraging people to essentially tattle on their neighbors for having dissenting opinions from the current administration. And it's just pretty dark. You don't have to go back far in history at all to know that when your opinions are not allowed to dissent from the governments, you are no longer living in a democracy. And you know, it's not like this is out of the blue. There's been so much, especially the past not even year that we've been going through. And it's wild that I sit here and I'm making dogwood jam, because that's something that I don't think I've ever thought about when you read about these, you know, terrible periods in history, is that despite everything going on, despite wars, despite fascism, despite suppression of people, there were still lives to lead. And that's something that's really hard to do. And yet it's absolutely, there's not an alternative. You absolutely have to live your life, because that's quite literally what life is. We all have to eat. We all have to do whatever it is we do. But the dissonance between the chaos in the world and the mundaneness of everyday life is draining and challenging. I don't know if anyone else has been sort of experiencing and feeling things like that. It's definitely been a feeling that's been with me on and off the entire year. And to a lesser extent, but still to an extent, throughout the last Trump presidency. And it doesn't seem to ever start to feel normal from what I can tell. And I don't know that you would want it to feel normal, but I don't really think I have like a nice conclusion here. It's just, it's kind of rough. Next, we're just gonna pass all that liquid through a cheesecloth, and this will pick out more of the smaller particles. All right, now we're gonna add this back to our pot. And the jelly making process starts. So for this, we're going to have to add some acid because dogwood cherries do not have very much acid. You could add about 4 tablespoons of lemon juice to this, or you could just add a teaspoon of citric acid. Ooh, I think that made it turn pink. Mix, mix, mix. Oh yeah, that did make the color a lot prettier. You can't see that well because it's a black pot, but you can see it did. It made it redder. Okay, I know I've already dirtied this pot, but I'm going to change because I remembered I'm making jelly, and jelly boils a lot. And this is already about halfway up the pot, and that's just gonna be not fun. We're gonna stir in 2 packages of pectin. This recipe also has you add a little bit of sugar now and the rest of the sugar later. I've never done that, but if I'm following their recipe, I'll follow their recipe. So I'm gonna add half a cup of sugar. We're gonna bring this up to a boil, then add the rest of the sugar, and then bring it up to another boil for a minute. So very much like our previous jelly attempt. Even after switching to the larger pot, it boiled over. And now I'm gonna get to clean burnt sugar off my stove. Joy. Also, my dog's outside barking. Don't know if you can hear that. Delight. Anyway, here's to hoping the smoke alarm doesn't go off. I've got a whole lot of jelly, and now we're just gonna try and transfer it into jars without burning more things. Well, it's a beautiful color. Okie doke. Now the only thing left to do is to can all of these jellies. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 half pints, and at least 1/2 pint all over the stove. I also have to clean that up, I guess, so, you know. Well, these tomatoes have really put me through a ringer, but I'm not going to let that stop me, and I'm not giving up on them. But I have learned a valuable lesson. Headspace really does matter. I think usually my eyeballing technique is actually good enough, but since I was eyeballing the wrong measurement, it did not work well for me. I will be using 1/2 inch of headspace, measured out on this popsicle stick, and I'll be very precise this time because I'm not going to let these tomatoes defeat me. So I took all the tomatoes, the canned ones and the uncanned ones, plucked them in this pot, and then cooked it down, letting the steam come off until it had reached about a similar consistency to what it was before. It is obviously more sauce-like and less diced now, but that's okay, these things happen. And we're going to can it like this. No need to add more salt or more citric acid because it's all in here. Okay, take 2. I swear if this goes wrong, I don't know. 2025 has been a hard year, and I do not know that I can survive the failure of tomato canning. Let's do this. Well, it's been a bit touch and go here, but let's summarize what we did this week. We made some zucchini pickles. Now, jarred pickles will taste better once they've been in the jar for at least a few weeks, so we won't be opening these today. Our first jar calamity there, so that was our first hint that maybe we needed to be doing a little bit better with proper canning techniques. Nevertheless, we were able to overcome and make some delicious looking dill zucchini pickles that I'm very excited to have on sandwiches and in salads and probably just on their own as a snack. Maybe on a nice cheese board, we'll see. Next, we made this gorgeous dogwood jam. I am in love with the color of that jelly. It is just stunning.
And we had a little bit left over that I put in the fridge. Honestly, most of it's been eaten at this point, but still I thought we could try some together. Jelly, 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 jelly. Okay, that's too much jelly, but cheers. That's a nice jelly. It's not my favorite jelly I've ever made. It's sweet and it's tart. It has good floral notes, but the dogwood flavor, aside from some of the floral notes, isn't particularly strong. It's definitely there, but I would like it to be stronger. So if I did this again, which honestly I probably will next year, I would reduce the amount of water compared to the amount of dogwood in the jelly, and hopefully that would concentrate the flavor of the dogwood a little bit better. This is also a jelly that I think we're gonna have to try and get to earlier in the year. I just worry that with the flavor already being a little bit mild, it could fade over time, and then we'll be left with just a sweet jelly. And so, you know, no rush. When I say earlier in the year, I mean the next several months. But I think I'm gonna prioritize this one on the eating train. Next, we took our tomatillos and made this salsa verde. Now, honestly, I could go for some salsa, so I think I'm gonna open this jar now. Pop! Delicious. I will say, even after adding extra jalapenos, it's not particularly hot. If I did this again, I might just sub the jalapenos out for a hotter pepper. But we're gonna have no problem getting through this in our household. This is actually the second jar we've opened. I was gonna show you with the other jar, but it is gone because we go through salsa pretty darn quick if it's here. It's got a nice level of tartness. Very tart without being overly tart. I like the smokiness you get from the roasting of the tomatillos. Good salsa, would make again. You can also make a salsa verde from green tomatoes if your tomatoes are coming in and won't ripen in time. It's a great thing to do. Occasionally, I'll also add a green to my salsa verde, like kale, blended in. I've never done that when I'm jarring the salsa. So look up a recipe and see if you can find one for that. But it is a nice way to add just some extra greens into your food. Finally, y'all were with me through the greatest tragedy, the tragedy of the tomato. And if you're wondering what happened, it was a success. Thankfully, in the second attempt, every single jar of tomatoes came out looking nicely sealed without water getting in. So, perfect. I think we can learn a couple things from that. We can learn that headspace is really important. I knew that it could stop your jars from sealing well, but that's never really been a huge issue for me because if they don't seal, you just pop them in the fridge and it's not what you wanted, but it works. I didn't know that they could make your jars explode. So I think I'm gonna be a lot more careful about headspace in the future. I'm gonna definitely be keeping my eyes out at the thrift store for one of those tools that's like a spatula you use to pop the bubbles, but then also has the headspace etched into the edge. I think the other thing we can learn and apply to our lives generally is even when something appears to have been a total failure, it can turn around. It kind of feels like something that would be in one of those like inspirational quote of the day calendars or something like that. But I like to think that things could turn around. I don't know that they can, but at the very least, even if we don't have a democracy, I have some canned tomatoes, so it's not all terrible. Instead of my usual outro where I tell you to comment, although please comment. If you can, tell me about your greatest canning failure. And then I ask you to like this video, although do that too. And then I tell you to subscribe. I mean, it'd be nice if you did. I thought I would show you a weird plant I found. I'm gonna put a picture on the screen of the seed of this tree that I found. It looks like a giant red artichoke and I had no idea what it was. So I picked one and I took it home. And I identified it as the seed from a certain magnolia plant. I want to say a broadleaf magnolia. I took that home with me and I left it in the sun and this is what it looks like today. Is that not insane? I thought it was insane when it just looked like a red artichoke, but now it's got these like pomegranate like pustules, and if you pull them out, let's see if I can give you a good show. Look, they've got that like slime. Oh, should we do another one? Oh, look at that. They're also like so incredibly smooth. There's a seed in there. And this is so rough that the contrast is fascinating. Anyway, nature is amazing. Thanks for being here and thanks for canning. Bye-bye.